I got a comment back from a woman who was so upset with me. I'll never forget when I wrote a social media post a couple of years ago, and I was just explaining what can cause cancer to start and what can cause it to grow. She thought that I was blaming her for getting cancer, and that's absolutely not true. I fully believe that we have responsibility in our lives, in our health, but we can't control everything. And I just want to be clear that this episode is not about blame at all. Not whatsoever. This is not my jam. This is more about empowerment, because whenever you start to understand more about your health, more about your body in focused, research-backed ways with a holistic spin, you start to understand what you can do in order to make a difference. Things that you can control and things that you can't control as well. Today's topic is on what caused my cancer diagnosis. And this is a common question that we get from a lot of our clients, a lot of you out there on my social media and things like that. You are wondering, how the heck did this happen? And it makes total sense. After walking through something as life-changing as cancer, you just want to understand. You want to understand, how did the cancer start and what is causing it to grow, or what would cause it to grow. And I just want to be clear that this episode is not about blame at all. Not whatsoever. This is not my jam. This is more about empowerment, because whenever you start to understand more about your health, more about your body in focused, research-backed ways with a holistic spin, you start to understand what you can do in order to make a difference. Things that you can control and things that you can't control as well. And I'll never forget when I wrote a social media post a couple of years ago now, where I was talking about some of the things we're going to talk about today. And I was just explaining underlying contributors to cancer and what can cause cancer to start and what can cause it to grow. And I got a comment back from a woman who was so upset with me. She thought that I was blaming her for getting the cancer. And that's absolutely not true. I fully believe that we have responsibility in our lives, in our health, but we can't control everything. And this is really coming from a source of education and empowerment. And I know a lot of you already know that for sure, but I just wanted to point that out, that with every episode I do, you take what you feel is right and you leave what doesn't. And I hope that you feel that I'm giving you more empowering suggestions and ideas and conversational pieces and thoughts, as opposed to saying it's all your fault, because definitely it is not your fault whatsoever. I know a lot of you come to us and you're already very healthy. You're very much knowledge seekers. You're extremely intelligent people. You're brilliant. You're hardworking. And I'm not just buttering you up. This is truly what we see whenever people reach out to us. You're just really on a quest for answers. And one of them is, how did this happen? Because you want to see, what can you do in order to make sure that it doesn't come back again? It's a very wise question to ask. And a lot of the diagnoses that our clients have had, they come out of the blue because they have never been on medications before. They maybe have no to very distant relatives who have ever had a cancer diagnosis. You were also potentially eating fairly well. You weren't really into McDonald's and things like that. You chose good foods, and then boom, cancer happens. And now you're wondering, how did this happen? And what can you do to make sure that you don't have to go through any of this again? And before we jump into a lot of the underlying causes of cancer, I do want to make it certain and known that we don't 100% know what causes cancer still. We know that there are things that cancer cells end up having that qualify them as cancerous cells. We know that sometimes there are certain genetic mutations that some of you may have that are listening to me. And just a little caveat here is that if you do have some of those genetic mutations, it doesn't mean that these aren't still going to be impactful for you for sure. You might have an increased risk of having cancer, but in the end, if we can still make a lot of these lifestyle changes, you don't have 100% risk of cancer. You have a lower risk of cancer coming back too, right? So we want to make sure that even if you have a genetic predisposition, you're still following along the information that I'm going to be sharing today. And if you don't have a genetic predisposition and this kind of just came out of the blue for you, then again, same information applies. We can definitely make a difference with what's going to move the needle on reducing risk of cancer coming back over time. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And yeah, there's never just one cause of cancer either. I like to think of it more like cancer contributors, not cancer causes, because there are a series of hits typically that will happen to your cells that will cause mutations, damage, missed repairs, immune evasion. So your normal cells, they receive hits and these things happen, and then they become cancerous cells. And it's a series of hits. It's kind of the key saying here. It's not just one thing happens and boom, cancer. It's usually some mutation happens and then your cell was unable to repair itself. And then also the immune system was unable to see that that cell was damaged and kill it off before it became full-blown cancer. And instead, that cancer that had that mutation that got a hit would develop into cancer. And this is usually a bunch of different hits, a bunch of different processes that happen in order for that cancer cell to escape all of the quality control checks, basically, that it should be going through. So our goal and our desire is, as people who are supporting people who have or wanting to reduce the risk of cancer coming back, is to go through all of these quality control checks and to make them as strong as possible so that they don't get bypassed again. Going through all these quality assurance, quality control checks in order to make sure that your body is optimal functioning in order to find and fight cancer cells before they become an issue. So we're going to talk about that. And I just really want to hammer home, it's never just one cause, it's multiple contributors. That's why I have my 6 pillars of cancer prevention, where we go through nutrition, mindset, exercise, and movement. We go through detoxification and digestion. We go through environmental contaminants, and we go through functional testing, epigenetic testing, things like that, because we're coming at this through all the quality controls in order to make sure that the body's functioning optimally. We're not just saying, avoid this toxin. We're saying avoid this toxin, but also let's work on your detoxification processes so that if it does come into contact with it, one, it can fight it off better, it can repair quicker, and it can eliminate it from the body quicker. So we want to look at all the different processes involved in helping to find and fight cancer and make sure that doesn't come back again. All right. So let's dive into this. Let me check my notes. I think I have a couple. How many do I have to go through? I have 4 specific themes to go on for today, 4 specific underlying causes that I want to go through with you. Let's start with the first one, of course. And the first one is a big one, and it's kind of like a catch-all, I would say, and it is chronic low-lying inflammation. Just inflammation in general is a known cancer starter, a cancer growth factor, so it encourages cancer to grow. And also, like, there's a lot of different sources that are leading to inflammation. So that's why I say the catch-all is like, everyone's probably going to have a little bit of inflammation in their body at certain points, but really our goals are to limit the amount of inflammation being made and to help the inflammation to be cleaned up as fast as possible. So in this kind of catch-all category of chronic inflammation, I want to discuss some potential sources. And a lot of them you might already know about and things that you're already working on, such as avoiding highly processed foods, because we know that it can encourage inflammatory markers to be released in our body, causing inflammation. Also, things like a lack of movement. If we've got gut health issues, we've got a lot of like constipation, bloating, digestive upset with it, if it's like heartburn or something like that, those are all going to be causing inflammation in the body. We can also think about chronic infections. We often will test our clients for EBV and whether it is a active or just like a past infection, and CMV, cytomegalovirus, because these might be impacting the inflammatory processes in the immune system. Also, unmanaged stress will encourage more inflammation, high blood sugar, and I won't go into all the unique pathways by which these things trigger inflammation, because there's just so many different biochemical processes involved that I get bored by it. I'm sure you'll get bored as well. But just generally speaking, common sources of chronic inflammation, low-lying inflammation, typically that might just hang out in the body with no major diagnoses or issues popping up until cancer pops up, would be like eating a lot of highly processed foods, lack of movement, gut health issues, chronic stress, chronic infections, and high blood sugar as well. So high blood sugar, I love talking about this, so I will do specific episodes on it. But high blood sugar can dampen the immune response, and it also creates more inflammatory signaling, causing more of those pro-inflammatory, pro-cancer causing messenger signals to be released from certain cells. And also high blood sugar can encourage a lot of insulin too, which is a pro-growth hormone. So that combination of inflammation, damaged cells, along with a pro-growth hormone is not a great combination, and that can lead to more cancer. Another quick thing I want to go into with chronic inflammation is gut dysbiosis, because it is a common thing that we see when it comes to the people we work with, the women we work with, is they've got a lot of constipation or even sometimes diarrhea, IBS-like issues, heartburn. And the gut is very central to your health and also reducing inflammation. Because if we're not adequately removing things through gut, so through in your intestines and bowel movements, then we're going to be reabsorbing certain things back into the system, whether it's like environmental contaminants or hormones that we don't want, like estrogen. They get recirculated and have more of an opportunity to cause more trouble again in the body. So if we can improve someone's gut and improve their microflora, their gut lining, the tone and the vagal tone, basically the movement of things through their system, making sure that they're having regular daily bowel movements. And that's a big part of reducing inflammation in the long run. Not to mention that your gut is responsible for absorbing a lot of your vitamins, nutrients, minerals, things like that. So if we're doing all these great things and trying to support your lowering inflammation and just support your body in general, we want to make sure the gut is making the best use of the food you're putting into it and absorbing a lot of those nutrients that you are giving it. We want to make sure that you're getting your vitamins and your antioxidants and your minerals and things like that through proper absorption into the gut. All right. So one, we don't want to absorb the things we don't want there. We want to get rid of those through bowel movements. And two, we want to make sure that we're absorbing the things we do want to be there, such as your vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, good stuff from food, basically. So whenever we're going to look at inflammation and what can we do to control inflammation being this cancer initiator because it causes mutations, and also cancer growth factor because it creates all the inflammatory signals and things like that the cancer loves to grow in. So what can we do to control this? Well, one, everyone's going to have a little bit of inflammation in the body. So we're not looking to 100% eliminate any of this for sure. The goal is really to set the body up to be able to handle this and also just limit the amount of inflammation that happens in the body. We just think about how when people go through life, there's a lot of inflammation that's going to accumulate that might even be worth it sometimes, certain experiences, certain times. And there's a balance there that we can find. Like hanging out with your friends and going for your favorite food sometimes with the inflammation that might come from maybe the seed oils that they potentially might be using in some of the cooking you have when you go to a restaurant with a friend. That might be counteracted by a lot of the joy and the social surroundings that you experience by being with that friend. So there's a give and a take. There's always going to be a little bit of inflammation now and then, but we want to tackle the ones that are quite blatant and obvious. We also want to know what are the levels like in your body, so we can do some blood work in order to determine what are inflammatory markers that might be heightened on your blood work. And we can use those to track over time too, to make sure that whatever we're applying is going to reduce those inflammatory markers too. But overall, like we're all going to experience some inflammation. And how can inflammation kind of lead to cancer? Well, a lot of people drink in their 20s, and that's pro-inflammatory when we go through alcohol. Maybe you were using Tide in your past, the Tide laundry detergent, whereas now you might be switching to something cleaner. So we can do that to control some things with inflammation, switch to a cleaner detergent. Even things like stress, financial stress, fast food between soccer practices, sitting in a desk job, all these things we've probably done in our life, and they can all be contributing to cancer through inflammatory processes. So our goal is to be like slow and steady, make changes. What can we do to create these lifestyles in order to reduce our risk of cancer coming back over time by reducing inflammation? So one, you're never going to get rid of it 100%. Some inflammation is actually helpful for healing tissues. Two, some of it is actually worth it because there's a trade-off where we get some benefits in terms of our health and overall well-being as well. And then basically three, we want to go through it step by step in order to reduce inflammation, not necessarily 100% be afraid and eliminate it, but just to see what can we do, what can we control, and slow, steady, simple changes will make a difference over time. All right, so that was just the blanket catch-all statement of chronic low-lying inflammation. Pretty much anything can cause inflammation, and it's just like what we say is inflammation is pro-cancer. Let's get a little bit more specific into what might be contributing to cancer. The next thing I want to talk about is immune suppression, which is very highly linked to inflammation. Your inflammatory system is basically made up of immune cells and other factors as well. But immune suppression, because basically at any given moment, anyone can have precancer or even like a few cancer cells hanging out in their body. But this doesn't mean that they have cancer. Because before these precancer or cancerous cells, before they take off and develop into full cancer, the immune system, when it's strong enough, when it's kind of primed and activated, it can find these precancer and cancer cells before they get an opportunity to grow and thrive and change into full-blown cancer. But if the immune system is dampened by things like viruses, I kind of alluded to EBV, CMV, HPV, these kind of viruses have some links to certain types of cancer, especially HPV and cervical cancer, for example, or EBV and certain types of blood cancers. That's going to kind of suppress your immune system and not make it as strong to go and fight cancer cells. Also, mold, mycotoxins, these can also dampen your immune response. Stress dampens your immune response. Certain medications can dampen your immune response. Of course, I love talking about sugar, blood sugar, excessive sugar intake can dampen your immune response too and have certain impacts on inflammatory markers and whether certain cells are activated to go and fight cancer cells, or if they're just like overburdened or not activated, they're not really doing their job to go and fight cancer cells. So if we can look a little bit more into maybe some chronic infections, look into mold mycotoxins if necessary, reduce stress, and then basically just help people with their nutrition. These things can all help your immune system to function optimally. And if we want to throw in additional things, like we love mistletoe injection therapy for helping to boost the immune response. We love certain types of mushroom supplements and astragalus and herbs and things like that for helping to boost the immune response. But it's not like everyone should go out and take astragalus. We really want to see, is there an underlying cause that we can identify first? Are you even immune suppressed? Just looking at your blood work again. And just basically kind of dig a little bit further as opposed to a surface level. Everyone should have heightened immune responses to keep cancer from coming back. Let's actually see, do you need it? And is there something specific that we can apply in order to support your immune response? Because strong immune response goes and finds and fights cancer cells before they actually become an issue down the road. Very, very important. The third thing I want to talk about are environmental contaminants and how a lot of us have overburdened detox pathways. It's really hard to determine if we're living in a more overexposed, dirtier environment these days, because in a lot of ways we have ways to reduce it, and where you have bigger health regulation rules and things like that, work regulation rules. But at the same time, it can sometimes feel like we're constantly exposed to like a chemical soup, at risk of sounding dramatic. But whenever we're in this, and I'm just going to keep going with the dramatic effect here, the chemical soup, things that we're going to be exposed to in our day to day, what's going to happen is it's going to build up in our body. It's going to dampen our detoxification pathways. They're going to become overburdened, overwhelmed. And then these things kind of just hang out in the body. And that gives us more opportunity to be exposed to cells that can encourage cancer mutations or just DNA damage, like disrepair, things like that. Those hallmarks of cancer. Those things can happen when we have higher exposure to a lot of these environmental contaminants. So we're looking at things like pesticides and microplastics, heavy metals, xenoestrogens, which are like the fake estrogens that our body can become exposed to. And these can be from exposures in things like our water, our air that we breathe in, the food that we eat. But what we can control is just looking at, like, can we do proper water filtrations? Can we consider organic food in certain times as opposed to not? And I would encourage you to go listen to, I think I did an episode already on the best nutrition, and I talked a little bit about organic versus non-organic. I'll put that link into the show notes there too. So organic versus non-organic food, so cleaner food choices. Mostly we focus in here with our people, with our women, our clients, our flourishers, on the makeup that they're wearing or the lotions, the shampoo, things like that are exposed to our skin, and making sure that they're cleaner products. We also want to look at even like kitchen utensils sometimes. This is something I looked into for myself and started working on more recently, is I did get rid of like my plastic spoons and spatulas and things like that. Now we're using more wooden spoons in our kitchen. Our measuring cups are now all stainless steel. Or like whenever I boil water, I usually like for tea or something like that, I usually just use like my stainless steel pot, or we would probably get a glass kettle if we could, but I just use my stainless steel pot to make tea. And you don't need to go do all this overnight and be completely afraid of this, because honestly, we're not going to 100% be able to avoid a lot of this stuff. We really want to work on strengthening our detoxification pathway. So going back to good gut health, liver function, lymphatic flow, blood vessels, moving, pumping, that comes through exercise a lot of the times as well. we want to work on our detoxification processes for sure. We also want to limit our exposure, but we want to live in the real world too. Like I still want to go camping and have a s'more. Sometimes I'm going to go to a hotel and I'm going to forget my shampoo and I'm just going to use their shampoo. I truly believe that if we focus more on like an 80-20 rule where we're doing 80% of the time, we're controlling what we can control, we're making a big difference, especially in our homes or where we spend the most time, then our body is so cool. It can handle so much. It is so smart and it can take care of a tuna sandwich that you're having at your friend's house or the shampoo from the hotel that maybe isn't as clean as you want it to be. So I truly believe we don't need to be overwhelmed and overburdened with constantly being afraid of everything because we also need to trust and rely on our body, know that we're doing what we can to support it in its functions, but also enjoy life. I think the stress that people get from worrying about using the hotel shampoo is often worse than the actual hotel shampoo. And there's always that fine balance of where do you find what works for you basically in real life. So basically, no, we don't 100% avoid a lot of these things. If we can work on strengthening our body as well as limiting a lot of exposures, then that's where the sweet spot is. And we can make a big difference when it comes to improving the health of our cells so that they're not going to be turned into cancerous cells and fed into cancerous processes. So we want to limit that chemical soup exposure and we want to work on building up the body. My last one here is about methylation issues, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. It's really hard to understand sometimes. And it comes down to the epigenetic testing that we often do with our clients. And methylation it has to do with activating and inactivating pathways in the body. So it's kind of like talking about methylation can turn on cancer promoting pathways or messengers, or it can turn off cancer protective pathways and processes. So it can do things that are good or bad. And most of the time, we can test what we want to improve in someone's body doing this epigenetic testing so that we can encourage the processes to be less pro-cancer by giving them certain foods and supplements to ideally support the pathways in healthy methylation processes. So methylation can influence the making of less harmful and more protective estrogens, for example. Estrogen is not just estrogen, it's a bunch of different forms and metabolites of estrogen and things like that. So we can test someone on epigenetics and see, do you have a predisposition? Like basically, does your body have a blueprint to want to create more harmful types of estrogens? And if so, if that's the case, we can identify that and then apply certain things to kind of bypass those pathways in order to encourage more healthy types of estrogens being made. Same thing when it comes to repairing cells that are damaged. Methylation can have to do with whether the cells are more easily repaired or not. So if we have repair processes that are damaged and methylation processes that are not working optimally, then that's going to increase someone's risk of cancer cells being formed and hanging out and then developing more cancer. And then in that case, then we apply, again, certain foods and supplements potentially in order to encourage more healthful processes to happen. And not only that, it can just kind of give us a better idea of how did cancer start in the first place. So was methylation a big issue? And that was potentially contributing to cancer starting. So one, we can tackle it. Two, it kind of gives you that little bit of information that you're seeking when it comes to like, how the heck did this happen? How did cancer start? So it's nice for our clients to see that sometimes where they're like, all right, I know this isn't just the one thing that caused the cancer, but in the big scheme of things, this was probably a big contributing cause. I can see it now. I can make a difference and I can make some changes in order to encourage healthier processes to happen. So overall, all of this isn't about fear. It's about awareness. You can reduce all of the exposures to cancer-promoting substances if we can kind of put our finger on what might have been some of the contributors. You can't control everything, but there's a lot that we can do above and beyond the standard care, the conventional protocols, when it comes to identifying how did cancer start, how was it encouraged to grow, and then what are the actionable changes that I can take in order to push things in the right direction so that we're not having to go through treatment again. And some of the things that it often comes down to when we're tackling the inflammatory processes, immune regulation, when we're looking at methylation, whenever we're looking at detoxification processes, is we change a lot of this with things we can control, like nutrition. So we're focusing on anti-inflammatory, antioxidant-rich foods, fiber-rich foods, diversity for microbiome health, increasing your folate-rich foods for methylation processes, decreasing your fortified folic acid foods for methylation processes that can actually make it worse. So folate versus folic acid can be different. So we can choose certain foods based on these things. We can also do more movement, and you can see like, okay, I can see that my immune counts on blood work are actually quite low, and I know that movement's going to help me. It can be motivational to see your numbers sometimes and have a focus and start exercising because you can see that it will make an impact on your white blood cells over time. Even just like we can swap slowly. We don't need to completely go and throw out all of your plastic spoons overnight, as well as your shampoos and soaps and laundry detergents and things like that, and cleaners. Swap slowly over time. Start with what you use the most often. Those tend to potentially have the greatest impact on you if you're using it more regularly. And then like restorative practices like sleep, joy, nervous system regulation all help to reduce inflammation. All that chronic stress can lead to inflammation. And then again, if we have more data points, if we're looking at your epigenetics, we can see what is your estrogen detox pathways? What are your cell repair pathways? And then we can apply like glutathione or melatonin or DIM or omegas or whatever it might be based on some of this epigenetic information in order to encourage more anti-cancer processes to happen in the body. And then blood work, we can measure everything from like inflammatory levels to vitamin deficiencies to improve inflammation, to improve cell healing. We can look at something like your neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio on your white blood cell count to tell us a little bit more about what is the strength of your immune system right now. And we can use it to monitor over time whenever we start initiating some changes in order to see, are we making a difference? Are we applying the right things, basically? Speaking of blood work, I will put a quick pin in here that I do have a boot camp coming up. I'll put the link in the show notes to join. I am so excited about this. I'm actually filming this episode pretty early, so I haven't even narrowed down the actual name of the boot camp yet, but I know that this episode will be coming out around the time that we will be holding the boot camp and holding the registration for it. So keep an eye, whether it's joining our emails or on my social media at Megan Bernard ND on Instagram. I have a boot camp coming up where I'm going to explain everything I can about blood work for cancer survivors. So going a little bit above and beyond, like your white blood cell count looks good and your liver and kidney function tests look fine. I'm going to pick it apart a little bit more and we're going to go above fine. I want to know what is more optimal as opposed to like, that's fine. Also, we're going to go into other tests that could be ordered as well, whether it's coming down to how to measure inflammation and how to measure your blood sugar above and beyond just an HbA1c or fasting glucose. We're going to talk about how to pick apart your white blood cell counts, your complete blood cell panel, basically. I'm going to go through all of that in this blood work boot camp, which I might rename or I might call it something else, but it's going to be something like that coming up very soon. And if you want to learn more about these focused areas that you can make a difference when it comes to understanding what's going on in your body, what might be contributing to cancer starting or growing, or potentially what might even look good so you can give yourself a pat in the back and not feel so bad about it. That'll be covered in this boot camp that I have coming up. So I hope you take a look into the notes there and sign up and meet me over there. But just a quick closing here, a reminder that you're not broken. You didn't cause your cancer, but there's definitely some things we can do in order to support the body and fix it. Like our society is very hard to understand sometimes. It's totally not set up, especially in North America, for overarching optimal health. We are busy. We have different schedules and taste buds, different social norms, and all these are sometimes hard to sift through sometimes in order to create a lifestyle that's really going to be supportive for anti-cancer processes. So I just want to say you're not broken. There are some things that your body might have been struggling with, but we can definitely give it the strength that it needs in order to carry these processes out more effectively. You do deserve clarity and confidence. Like, I'm not saying that we can point out exactly what caused cancer starting, but we can start to have an idea around what are the biggest risk factors for you above and beyond the conventional known norms. I think it's about high time that we go a little bit deeper than smoking and like alcohol and things like that. I think we can get a little bit deeper into like the blueprints of people's bodies now, looking at your medical history, health history, and more importantly, taking that information, applying to what can we do right now to support you. So that's pretty much what I have for you today. I want you to come at this as a last mindset thought from an area of a thought process of curiosity and compassion and data, and not from a place of fear and lack, basically. We can totally look at this as, now I've got this information, I'm going to start working on this, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be important and fun, and I'm going to be curious about it as opposed to completely afraid of everything. I think curiosity and fear are very highly linked. So if we can change that fear into curiosity, I think you're going to see a world of difference in the changes you're going to make and how you're going to feel, because we truly just want you to thrive after cancer. We don't want you to just go through cancer treatment and then be always afraid of cancer coming back. We want to start putting cancer in the past. And I think one of the greatest ways to do that is our mindset shifts. One of them being to think about curiosity as opposed to fear, and to focus on being healthy as opposed to not having cancer. I want to let that simmer in your brain for a little bit. And that is all I have for you today. I hope that you are enjoying the information so far, and I hope that you're not just surviving now, that you're beginning to flourish after cancer. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Flourish After Cancer podcast. If you loved this episode, please be sure to leave a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Sending all my best your way, Dr. Megan.